This is CS952, Introduction to Web Technologies and Design, and we're just about ready to wrap up working with Bootstrap Responsive Elements. And we've done a lot. We added an image carousel, we worked with Bootstrap responsive components that rearrange themselves, we explored visibility classes. Now we're going to work with a modal element. So I'm going to open up my home page. We had the template page open before. If you have your template page open, be sure to close that template page, and then let's come back here and let's open up our index page, which is the same thing as our home page. And if we look, we've got this button here that says Learn More, right? So if I click on that button, I can see it's a button. It is a member of the button-primary class. You might wonder, are there other button classes? Let's go. Let's go back to our live site, and let's use our Google search tool to type in Bootstrap 3 button class. Okay. Here we go. Components. This is showing us all of our glyphicons. Wow, look at all these different glyphicons we could use. Let's scroll on down. And let's just go straight to button. We're looking for our button classes. Okay. So here are some of our different button classes. We can see we've got default button, primary, success, info, warning, danger. So to get one of these buttons, all we need to do is just basically change the class. Like, for instance, maybe we like the look of this danger button. We just need to change the class from primary to danger. So if we go back here to Dreamweaver, I've got my button selected here. I could click and use my quick tag editor. That's what we did just a second ago. Or I could just, with my button selected, double click on the word primary and start to type in the word danger. Look, it fills in danger for us if I select danger. Now I got that red button. Yeah, that looks kind of nice too. Now, right now this is an anchor. If I just click on the button, we can see that it's got an anchor. It's not linked to anything. Now, we learned how to link to pages. What if we wanted to link to our history page? Okay, we could click on Browse for File, or I could choose Point to File and just point this to my history page. Let's hit F12 to preview in a browser. If we scroll down and we click on our Learn More button, there we go. We don't have any content for our history page, but that would take us to our history page. Okay, simple enough. Maybe we want to do something else. We could use what's called a modal, which is a window that pops up. I'm sure you've seen this. You maybe didn't know it was called a modal. I need the code. We don't have the code for us right now to put in a modal. Where do we go to find the code? Well, if you know you're looking for things, you can't go wrong if you use Google. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just search for W3SCHOOLS Bootstrap 3 modal. Okay. So here we go, Bootstrap 3 modals. Let's click on this link, the first link that comes up, and it says how to create a modal. So first it says we need some sort of a button. Well, we know we've got a button, right? That anchor that we have, right? It's a member of the button class. This is what we need to add. We need to add these two attributes. One attribute that says data toggle, that's the attribute, and we're going to say it equals to modal, and then we have another attribute, data target, and it needs to equal to my modal. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to copy that code. I'm going to highlight that code. I'm going to right click and choose copy. I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to click on my Learn More button. And you know what? Let's do this. Let's go to Split View. That's always a good way to do this. Split View lets us see what we're clicking on and the code that we're editing at the same time. So here we go. So I clicked on my Learn More button, and this is the actual code. It says it's an anchor. It's got a class of button danger. We changed that from primary to danger to give it that red appearance. This is the href. This is what it's linking to. So we want to give it that data attribute that I just copied. So I'm going to put my cursor inside of the anchor tag. We need to do this inside the anchor tag. I'm going to right click and choose paste. Okay. So, and I need to add in a space there. We need to have a space between these attributes. So we have, and I got one too many spaces here. So it's an anchor now. Then we have a data attribute. Data toggle, it equals modal. Another attribute, data target, equals my modal. And it's got a pound sign in front of it. So we know it's going to be looking for something with an ID of MyModal. Before this is done, we're going to add something with an ID of MyModal. The class is button danger. Let's hit refresh. We actually don't want to be linking to the history page at this point, so I've clicked inside of my anchor tag. I'm just going to take where it says history. We could delete, or I'm going to use that pound sign, that good old handy dandy placeholder, and click there. Okay, all right. So this is part 1 done. I'm going to hit save all. So now, when we click on the button, it's going to be able to launch a modal. What we need is the second part. We actually need that modal part. So let's go back to the web page we were looking at. And here's the second part. The second part is this code here. It says it's going to have a modal. And this modal has an ID of what? MyModal. You knew that was coming, right? Because we had a link to pound sign MyModal, which means it's going to be linking to something with an ID of MyModal. So we had to have some sort of code that said MyModal. Okay? So this is our classes here, and I'm going to highlight all this code. This is the other part that we need to add to our site. Highlight all this code. I'm going to right click and choose copy. Now let's go back to Dreamweaver. Where do we add this code? We're going to add this code at the very bottom of our web page. And I'm going to scroll on down. You know what, let's just switch to code view only so we can see all of the code we have here. Okay, so I'm going to scroll on down, and right before we get to the end of our editable region, I'm going to click after that last closing div, and I'm going to hit the enter key a couple times to give myself some space, and then I'm going to paste in that code that we copied. Let's right click and choose paste. Now here's the thing. We're not going to see this code because by default modals are hidden. When a page loads, we're not going to see this code. We're only going to see this code when we click on that button that says learn more. How does that work? Let's preview in a browser. Save changes, yep. Okay, so we've got this button now, learn more. Before we were linking to the history page, but now we've given it those 2 data attributes. And what happens when we click on it? We get this little modal that opens up. Now there's not much for us to look at this point. You can see there's 2 lines of content. One says modal header, and the next one says some text in the modal. And you know, we could leave it like this if that's all we wanted to do. We've got 2 ways to close it, either with the X or with the close button. I do have some content in mind for us to add. So let's go back to Dreamweaver. So we can see that text that we saw that said modal header, it's actually contained inside of this H4 tag right here, right? That's why it's small, because it's in the H4 tag. So it says modal header. I'm going to change this to say, instead of saying the words modal header, I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to type in 10 little known pencil facts. F-A-C-T-S. Okay. Now I'm going to hit save all. So let's see what this looks like. Let's hit F12, preview in the browser, and when I click on it now, it says 10 little known pencil facts. It still says some text in the modal. I've got something better in mind for that. So let's close this. Let's go back to Dreamweaver. And what we want to change is this text right here. If you look, we can see that there's a div that has a class of modal body. That makes sense. It's the body of the modal. It's where all the content is. And then inside of that, we can see we've got a paragraph tag, right? There's a paragraph element, and inside of that element it says some text in the modal. So this is what we're going to get rid of, and we're going to replace it with something more interesting. So I'm going to click on that paragraph tag and just hit backspace or delete. I'm going to delete that. And I already have some content for us to use. Now you may have your own content you'd like to use, but if I go to my tutorial folder, and in my tutorial folder, let's open up our text files folder again. And if we scroll down here, there's a section here that says modal content, and this is an ordered list. If you were in class here at the tutorial, remember we talked a little bit about ordered and unordered list. This is an ordered list, which means it's going to be numbered. So I'm just going to highlight all of this code, and notice it's got 10 list items. I'm going to highlight all that code and I'm going to hit copy. We're going to go back to Dreamweaver. And now inside of my modal body, I'm going to right click and choose paste. Okay, we're good. Now I'm going to go and choose to preview in my browser. And it's going to ask, do I want to save changes? I'm going to say yep. And so now when I click on Learn More, let's see what happens. How about that? We get this neat little list of 10 little known pencil facts. And again, this is all nice and responsive. If I resize my web page, you'll notice that my modal resizes along with me. So we've covered a lot of territory here. This wraps up working with the Bootstrap framework, and we're going to continue moving on working with tables, forms, audio, and video, and then wrapping up.